All right, so today we're diving into E2E Networks, an Indian cloud computing company. They're doing some pretty interesting things in the AI space, especially with all this buzz around AI lately. It seems like everybody's trying to get in on the action.
Yeah.
And we got some excerpts from their Q2FY25 earnings call. And to be honest,
Yeah.
it was a lot to take in, all that financial jargon and the technical terms. But luckily, we have an expert here to help break it all down.
Yeah, happy to help decode all that Wall Street speak. Honestly, it's a pretty fascinating story, especially when you think about, the bigger picture of cloud computing and how quickly companies are adopting AI.
So for those of us who aren't fluent in finance, let's start with the basics. E2E Networks has been around for a while, since 2009, but in 2018, they decided to make a big shift. They decided to focus on GPUs. Can you tell us a little bit more about why that was such a pivotal moment for them?
Sure. So think back to 2018. That's when we really started to see this huge surge in AI and machine learning. And E2E Networks, they were smart. They recognized that these technologies, they needed a ton of computing power. And GPUs, those specialized processors, they were the key. So yeah, it was a bit of a gamble. But it looks like it's really paid off for them. They basically put themselves right at the forefront of this massive tech wave.
So instead of just offering, generic cloud services, they went all in on the hardware and infrastructure that's specifically designed to power AI.
Exactly. And that specialization is a big part of their business model. E2E Networks argues that. Renting their cloud GPUs, it's much more cost effective than buying and managing your own.
Now,
especially for companies that don't need that constant 24/7 GPU access. They're offering a more, I guess you could say, more tailored approach, and potentially a more affordable one compared to some of the bigger players out there like, AWS or Azure.
Right. Kind of like choosing a specialized boutique versus a giant department store. Sometimes you need that personalized touch.
Yeah, perfect analogy.
So this focus on cost effectiveness, it kind of plays into this trend that we're seeing, this cloud repatriation, where companies are realizing that the initial cost savings they were promised by these big hyperscalers, they don't always pan out the way they expected. The pricing models can get pretty complex, and the bills, well, they can be a lot higher than anticipated. So E2E Networks is kind of betting on the idea that businesses are looking for something different. They want pricing that's more predictable and transparent, especially for these specialized resources like GPUs.
Exactly.
Okay, so they're trying to carve out this niche by offering something that's more focused, more manageable, and potentially more affordable. But it can't just be about price, right? I mean, they must have something else that sets them apart.
Oh, absolutely. E2E Networks, they place a huge emphasis on their software platform. They've designed it specifically to optimize the use of their GPUs. So it's all about minimizing downtime, streamlining workflows, making the whole process of setting up and running these AI workloads as efficient as possible. Think of it as, they're not just selling you the engine, they're selling you the entire car, fine-tuned and ready to race.
I like that. So let's talk about their target market, India. What makes that region such an attractive opportunity for E2E Networks?
Well, India is a really interesting case. I mean, they generate just an enormous amount of data, but they have a relative lack of computing power to actually process all that information, especially when it comes to AI applications. So E2E Networks, they're looking to fill that gap. They see themselves as kind of a crucial part of India's digital transformation. And they're betting that as more Indian companies embrace AI and machine learning, the demand for their specialized cloud services is just going to explode.
So they're not just riding the AI wave. They're trying to be the ones who provide the surfboard to this massive wave of adoption. That's a pretty smart move, especially if they can pull it off. Yeah. But before we get too carried away, I think it's important to look at the risks and the challenges they face, because I'm sure it's not all smooth sailing. So what are some of the potential roadblocks they might encounter?
Well, competition is a big one. I mean, the cloud GPU space, it's attracting a lot of players.
Nonetheless.
From these global giants to smaller, more niche companies. So E2E Networks, they're going to have to stay agile, keep innovating to maintain their edge. And then there's the whole issue of supply chain. Relying on getting the latest and greatest GPUs. The supply chain for these components can be pretty volatile. Any disruptions there could really impact their ability to meet demand.
Okay, so competition and supply chain issues.
Yeah.
Those are definitely things to keep an eye on. But they have secured some pretty significant funding recently, right? I'm guessing that gives them at least a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah, for sure. They recently raised a pretty substantial amount, about 405 crores, which is over $50 million US. And the way they plan to use that funding, it gives us some insight into their growth expectations and where they see the biggest opportunities.
Okay, so let's dig into those numbers and see what their plans tell us about the future of E2E networks. So that's the story for part 2 of our deep dive.
Welcome back. So let's talk about how E2E Networks plans to use all this cash, to really fuel their growth.
Yeah, they've got this big pile of money now, over $50 million. What's the game plan? Where are they focusing their investments?
Well, their strategy seems to be kind of two-pronged. First, they're really focused on infrastructure expansion, a big chunk of that funding, something like 75%. It's earmarked for boosting their GPU capacity. They're actually building a whole new cloud zone in South India to meet the growing demand for all these AI-powered services in that region.
Makes sense. They're doubling down on what they do best, providing the muscle behind India's AI boom. But what about the other 25%? What are they planning to do with that?
That's where the market diversification comes in. They're allocating that remaining 25% to broaden their customer base. So while startups have been, these early adopters of AI, E2E Networks is setting its sights on bigger fish, government agencies, large enterprises.
So they're not putting all their eggs in one basket. They're realizing that.
Yeah.
The real potential of AI, it lies in its mainstream adoption. It's not just a niche technology anymore.
Exactly. And this shift towards enterprise and government clients, you can actually see it reflected in their financial performance. In Q2 of FY25, their total revenue was a whopping 484 million rupees, a 120% increase year on year.
Wow, 120%. That's some serious growth. But revenue is only part of the story, right? What about their profitability? Are they actually making money from all this expansion?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer seems to be a resounding yes. Their EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, hit 314 million rupees, an 81% jump year on year, and their EBITDA margin, which basically tells you how much profit they're making from each rupee of revenue, reached a very healthy 66.1%.
Okay, so not only are they growing rapidly, they're also becoming more efficient and more profitable as they scale. That's a good sign. It suggests they're not just burning through cash to chase growth. But hold on, didn't we say earlier that competition is a major concern?
Yeah.
So how are they planning to stay ahead of the pack in such a crowded market?
They're betting on a combination of technological innovation and strategic partnerships. Their software platform, it's a key differentiator for them. They're constantly refining it to optimize performance, enhance security, and make it even easier for customers to manage their AI workloads. And they're not just relying on in-house development. They're actively forging partnerships with leading AI software and hardware providers to kind of expand their capabilities, offer more comprehensive solutions.
So they're not trying to do everything themselves. They're leveraging the expertise of others to stay on the cutting edge. It's a smart move, especially in a field as complex and as rapidly evolving as AI. But let's not forget about those risks we talked about earlier. Competition is fierce. And that supply chain for GPUs, it can be really unpredictable. How are they addressing those challenges?
Well, for the competition, they're tackling it head on by focusing on what they do best, providing that specialized expertise and those tailored solutions. For the Indian market, they're betting that, their deep understanding of local needs and their proven track record will give them an advantage over these global players who might not be as attuned to the nuances of the Indian business landscape.
So they're playing the home field advantage card. They're the local experts who understand the terrain better than anyone else. But what about the supply chain issue? Any disruptions there could really derail their growth plans. How are they mitigating that risk?
They're actually pursuing a multi-pronged approach. They're diversifying their supplier base, building stronger relationships with key vendors, and even exploring strategic investments in GPU manufacturing to secure a more stable supply in the long run.
So they're not just sitting back and waiting for things to happen. They're being proactive, taking control of their own destiny, which is a bold move, but one that could pay off big time if they can pull it off. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the long-term vision for E2E networks. Where do they see themselves in the next 5 to 10 years? What are their grand ambitions?
Their goal is to be the undisputed leader in AI-powered cloud services in India, the go-to platform for any business or organization looking to harness the power of AI.
So they're aiming for the top spot. They want to be the Google or Amazon of AI in India. That's a pretty lofty goal. But given their current trajectory and their ambitious plans, it doesn't seem entirely out of reach.
It definitely doesn't. They have a compelling vision, a proven business model, and a strong track record of execution. But of course, there are still challenges ahead. Only time will tell if they can actually achieve these audacious goals.
Well, on that note of cautious optimism, let's wrap up part 2 of our deep dive.
Yep.
In the final part, we'll explore some of the potential risks and opportunities that could make or break E2E Network's journey to the top. So stay tuned.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into E2E Networks. We've talked about their business model, their impressive growth, and their ambitious expansion plans. But like any company, especially in a fast-paced industry like this, there are always challenges. What could get in the way of E2E Networks becoming the leading AI cloud provider in India?
Well, one of the biggest challenges they face is the constantly shifting landscape of AI technology. GPUs are the gold standard right now. But who knows what the future holds, right?
Yeah, who knows what's coming next?
Exactly. New hardware architectures like specialized AI chips, maybe even quantum computing, those could emerge and disrupt everything. It's like being at the top today doesn't guarantee you'll be there tomorrow.
Exactly. E2E Networks needs to be ready to adapt if they want to stay ahead.
So it's not enough to just ride the wave. They need to be able to anticipate the next one.
Right. And speaking of staying on top, another challenge is the competition. Global giants like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they're all investing heavily in AI cloud services.
And they have a lot of resources.
Exactly. So the question is, can E2E Networks compete with these giants in the long run?
It's a bit of a David and Goliath situation, but remember, David won that fight. E2E Networks might be smaller, but they're agile, they have a deep understanding of the Indian market, and they've got a proven track record.
True. And they're banking on the idea that businesses in India might prefer working with a local provider, someone who understands their specific needs.
It's like choosing a local restaurant over a big chain. Sometimes you just want that personal touch.
Right. But let's talk about another potential risk. Talent. The AI industry is really competitive when it comes to attracting top engineers and researchers. Can E2E Networks get the talent they need to stay ahead?
That's a key factor for sure. They need to create an environment that attracts the best minds.
So competitive salaries, challenging projects, opportunities for growth.
Absolutely. And a culture that fosters innovation. And then there's the regulatory landscape. Governments are still trying to figure out AI, and new regulations are popping up all the time.
So they need to be adaptable and make sure they're following the rules, which could always change.
Exactly. And they need to be mindful of the bigger picture, the societal impact of AI. As AI becomes more powerful, it's crucial to use it responsibly.
It's not just about profits, it's about making sure AI benefits everyone.
Right. And I think E2E Networks understands that. They see themselves playing a role in shaping the future of India.
So do you think they have what it takes to become the leading AI cloud provider in India?
They're in a high-growth market, they have a strong business model, they're well-funded, and they have a talented team. But they also face challenges, like we talked about: competition, technology changing, talent acquisition, regulations. So opportunities and risks, like a lot of companies in this space.
Exactly. Only time will tell how it all plays out. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into E2E Networks. We covered a lot: their business, their growth, their plans, and the challenges they face.
We talked about the numbers, the technology, the competition, and the ethical side of things.
We've learned a lot about this company and the AI industry.
It's a fascinating field that's constantly evolving.
And as always, we encourage you to keep learning, stay informed, and form your own opinions. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, happy learning.